Hi everyone. I just wanted to come on and say thank you for a few things and to share with you something about the World's Fairs that I've never shared yet on this channel or in any of the interviews that I've done, but I think are very valuable for our contemplation process. So first is to say a great thank you to all of you who have supported this channel and really encouraged what I've been sharing here. Um, the video I did yesterday and talking about some of the changes and the focus I want to get into. It was a challenging day. I have a lot of things that are happening now. We're in the process of moving to a farm many hours away, and the packing and the planning and the preparation is can be a bit stressful. I sometimes feel the world's energies, and they affect me sometimes. But today I'm very, very clear, very calm. And so I wanted to make sure I first say thank you for um, the kind words you've presented to me, the books that you've bought to this point and will continue to buy. That means a lot. I put a lot of time and effort into those writings, and it's always appreciative when I see sales happening. That's always very nice. And just the very interesting and useful comments. I just want to make sure that you know that I'm really appreciative of what you're doing and sharing back with me as I put out these videos. I wanted to thank also a comment from Matt, our friend over at Quantum of Conscious, that he reminded me again that, you know, history happens to be, for whatever reason, my main method of digging into the dream in some cases, digging into the matrix. And that as long as we use our study in the right way, don't take it to too much distraction, and try to find ways that make it valuable to where we are now, that there can still be a lot of use and value in digging into the dream as long as we don't let the dream catch us too much while we do it. So I wanted to say thank you for that to him. And with that, that made me feel like I want to share a little piece of the St. Louis World's Fair from my book in 1904, and that is the part of what would be called the Midway, the carnival area of the exposition. And so much of my talk and generally the talk on these fairs is so much about the buildings and the construction and the theories behind that and the type of materials used and the technology that's being displayed. But the Midway part is just as important to understanding and unraveling our last 100 years, I think, as I will explain. What I'm going to do is read you the 3 or 4 paragraphs from my exposition book here on St. Louis, because I want you to get the scale of what you are would have been seeing. So you have all the buildings, you have all the technological exhibits, you have all the art exhibits, you have 50 to 100 giant buildings all through the fair, and then you have this. And I just want you to contemplate the size this must have taken. The Pike was the name for the fair's long Midway street, and was more than just a few booths and carnival rides. It was almost 1.5 miles long, and doctors warned weaker patients not to go to it out of fear they would collapse from trying to see it all. Well, the Chicago Ferris wheel was there, and of course, basic rides and the like. Take a gander at the world experience the visitor could enjoy. It so dwarfed what was at Chicago, I have to present only some of it to you to get a sense of what it was, for it was like a giant worldwide travel experience, accentuated by thousands of actors. Each exhibit had a giant restaurant seating as many as 3,000 people. Ancient Rome was a colossal exhibit with over 400 actors employed to give the visitor the illusion of going back in time to the life of gladiators. A large arena called the Hippodrome showcased chariot races, jousting, boxing, and gladiatorial clashes with 200 persons, 40 animals, including tigers, lions, and leopards. The finale was a reproduction of Nero's Rome burning. Oddly, this is the exact Roman period I think these expositions are mirroring that I discuss in Chapter 7. The Tyrolean Alps was a 9-acre reproduction of the Alpine region in Bavaria, Germany. It had 21 village cottages, a cathedral, and gigantic mountains of staff. Visitors could ride a simulated tram car through the Alps where real cattle and goats would be in pasture. Dancers and musicians entertained the crowds. Jerusalem covered 11 acres and included 22 streets and 300 buildings. Replicated were the stable in which Jesus was said to be born, and the Golden Gate, the Mosque of Omar, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Over 1,000 people from Jerusalem traveled to the United States to participate and work at this exhibit. Like at Chicago, one could walk down the streets of Cairo, smoke a water pipe, ride a camel, haggle for carpets, or walk through a replica of Luxor Temple. At the streets of Seville, one saw a replica of the Plaza de Toros in Madrid and the Gypsy Lane of Barcelona. The Great Siberian was a train ride that utilized illusion to make one believe they were on a great cross-country Russian railway. The Irish Village was entering via a replica of St. Lawrence's Gate. Paris replicated France during medieval times, and there was Constantinople, the Chinese village, and the streets of Old St. Louis. But there were more than just world trips. Frank E. Mills produced what was supposed to be the greatest and most realistic military spectacle known in the history of the world. It was a mock battle from the recent Boer War. Different portions of the concession featured a British Army encampment, several South African native villages, including Zulu, San, and Swazi, and a 15-acre, that's 61,000 meters squared arena in which soldiers paraded and major battles from the war were reenacted, with over 600 veteran soldiers from both sides of the war. At the conclusion of the show, the Boer General Christian de Wet, portrayed by an actor of course, would escape on horseback by leaping from a height of 35 feet into a pool of water. Another was the Battle Abbey, designed to be a 400 by 250 foot square replica of the convent near Hastings where the Normans defeated the Saxons. It was fashioned complete with towers, bastions, parapet, and drawbridge. Inside of this, though, was a museum of American wars, with 6 huge cycloramas depicting very famous American battles from Gettysburg, Manassas, Yorktown, New Orleans, Buena Vista, Little Bighorn, and Manila. The Gettysburg cyclorama was 50 feet high and 400 feet in circumference. This is not including all of the giant, what you might call, human zoos that were on display, where primitive people were to be shown how inferior and weak they were compared to the superior intellect of Western civilization. There was the Cliff Dwellers, which was a reproduction of the caves of the southwestern United States, covering 5 acres of ground, containing 100 dwellings, and populated by 300 natives of the Moki and Zuni races, including men, women, and children. For an extra 25 cents, one could enter the theater to watch Indians perform snake and kachina dances. One could purchase authentic basket weaving, pottery, and silverwork. J. M. Buell wrote in the opening of his volume on Anthropology at the Exposition that the fairs had an all-embracing scope in which is to be seen the works of all men, of all races, the primitive and the barbaric, brought in contrast with the most civilized, that every step of progress may be observed. I hope this gives you a little bit of a sense of the scale and the mass, where you would be going to exhibits where there would be 1,000 actors portraying ancient Rome, or villages in Siberia, or parts of Old St. Louis. Or there must have been 30, 40, 50,000 people employed as actors and servants and waiters and whatnot for all of these exhibits on the Midway. But more importantly was the scale and the amazement of them was, I think, the indoctrination that this was really all about. I mean, this was documentaries on the Learning Channel before there was television. This is how people were being fed the information of what they should believe. And imagine the historical and the cultural osmosis that must have happened for every fairgoer who went and saw and believed they were seeing an accurate depiction of whether it be ancient Rome or Jerusalem or the streets of Cairo or Luxor Temple or these battles or anything else, that they were getting the direct and clear truth. The way people would believe what they watch on the news today is the same thing. I want you to put that kind of context into what it must have been like for these fairgoers. And given that these were more the elites of the period, or at least the people who had some money, that means this would have been populated by school teachers and university professors and anyone who is in the position of presenting data and information, the people who wrote the books, the people who wrote the histories, the people who wrote and presented the underlying knowledge base that was going to become the Western world ever since this period of the fairs. And I think it's a really good example for us to see that these fairs were more than just the buildings, were more than just the architecture, were more these fairs created the entire cultural Western mindset of superiority, of progress, of evolution, of consumerism, of technology. The world you look at when you look out the window today, the world that you've known your entire life, was born at these fairs. The world you knew your entire life was born at these fairs. And we then have to ask ourselves, the world that's going to be here 50 years from now, assuming people are still here in some form, that world is being created now. The world of 100 years in the future is being laid down in one form or another right now. And the direction that world is going to go is going to be very dependent on how things play out over the next 2 or 3 years. The world that the people will know, in 100 years, whether they know it or not, will link back to this small 2 to 5 year period we are in the midst of right now. Just like it's very hard for all of us to believe that the world we live in now comes from these fairs. And when you take back to the ending of Matt's video, were these fairs specifically driven by a group of people, you might say, deciding that the direction of the world they wanted and the direction of, you might say, the propaganda that they wanted put into the minds of the population were set by them? Or was it even set in some way by the dream itself, that the matrix itself has a life force of its own, that the thing we call this reality is generating things within it. It's generating its own story. It's generating its own presentation, its own perception. So I wanted to again just say thank you to everybody for being a part of this journey that we're sharing in some way together. I hope you are finding value in it, and I hope you are finding and will find value in when I start reading Falling for Truth to come up in a few days and begin the journey, hopefully, of really being able to take us to another level of inner examination. And thanks again for the reminders from Matt and some others of the values of looking at things in the ancient and historical past, as long as we use it to bring knowledge to the present and bring knowledge to our understanding now, not as a way of just keeping us focused on what happened before, but to use it to stay one step ahead of where the dream might be moving us, all of us, in the upcoming years. So, thanks again for joining me. It's appreciated, and we will see you in a few days with yeah, the beginnings of falling for truth and seeing how that goes. Cheers.